Hi, I'm Tejas Kumar, and I run a small but effective developer relations consultancy. What that means is we help other developer oriented companies have great relationships with developers. And we do this through high level strategic discussions and mentorship and hiring, or we do it through low level hands on execution. Like we literally sometimes write the docs, do the talks, etc. In that spirit, it's important for us to kind of, stay in the loop and be relevant and be relatable to developers to have great DevRel, developer relationships. And sometimes to do that, you just have to build stuff. You see, a lot of conferences these days are a bunch of DevRel people trying to sell you stuff. And we don't like that. It's DevRel, not DevSell. And in that spirit, we're not going to sell you anything here. We're just going to hack together. The purpose is to have some fun, to learn a bit, and so on. What we're going to do in our time together is we're going to build a voice activated AI assistant like Jarvis from Iron Man, using only web APIs, just JavaScript. We'll use Vite for dev server, but that's it. This all just works. Now we're going to be using some non-standard APIs that do require prefixes and stuff. But if you really wanted to, you could use it in production. You could supply your own grammars and so on. The point today, though, is not that. It's to have fun while learning a bit and also, vibing a little bit, okay? All in the spirit of celebrating JavaScript and AI. So with that, let's get into it by drawing our plan in TL Draw. So we're going to go to TL Draw. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to first have speech to text. This is using the web speech API. From there, we want to take this text and give it to OpenAI, the GPT 3.5 turbo model. From there, we want to speak, so text to speech from OpenAI. This is the plan. We want to do this with browser APIs, and then we want to reopen the microphone after GPT-4 talks, and just have it come back here, right? So let's do, this is kind of what we want to do. And let's draw some lines. So it's really just speech to text, an AJAX request, and then text to speech. This is kind of what we want to do. Not necessarily hard. There's some functions here. This is called the speech recognition API that we're going to be using. That's actually a thing introduced in 2013. It's been around for a while. And this is the speech synthesis API. So both of these exist in JavaScript in your browser runtime, and they're just ready to use. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use them to fulfill this diagram, and then we'll go from there. Now to do that, we're going to use Chrome because this really works in Chrome, but there's ways you can get it to work in other browsers. And we're going to open VS Code and just get started. So we have a blank page with a little button that says hi. It doesn't really do anything. If we want to look at the code, index.html is HTML, some head, just removing the default margin. And there's actually a little thing here that just so I know where what my face is covering, a little black box. You can actually see if I bring this down a little bit. See, so that's where my face goes. Anyway, and then we have this black box, the button that does literally nothing, and index.tsx. So let's start by recognizing my speech. Chrome has a speech recognizer built in. It had it since 2013, and it just works. Other browsers have different implementations and so on, but the goal is to build ourselves an assistant. We're not building a product to sell. We're just learning, having fun to build ourselves an assistant, okay? So in that spirit, what we'll do is we'll say const recognition is new speech recognition, and this will predictably fail because you need a vendor prefix in Chrome, but Chrome doesn't use WebKit. Safari uses WebKit. What's the prefix to use this in Chrome? It's WebKit. I don't know why, but there. And this now should give us no errors. So it is there. So what do we want to do? We need an event listener. So we'll add an event listener to this called result. Rather, listen on the result event. And when we get a result, we're going to const text is the results. Oh, oops, we should maybe get event. The events results, the first result, and the first attempt of the first result. So this API will do, if we let it, will do many guesses about what I said. And I feel like it's good enough that we just run with the first one. So we'll iterate if we need, but we get the first result and then the first attempt of that result. Dot transcript. And let's console.log and say you said text. Okay, save. We need to also start recognizing recognition.start. Hello, my name is Tejas and I run a DevRel agency. Oof. Fantastic. Hello, my name is Tejas, and I run a DevRel. Close enough. So it's working. We have speech to text. What do we do now? Let's talk to OpenAI, GPT 3.5 Turbo, give it the text, and then see what it says. To do that, we're going to conversate. We're going to communicate with the OpenAI API. Okay. So to do that, we're going to open up the API documentation, API reference. We're going to get a curl request right here. This is an image edit. I don't want that. I want a chat completion. So I'm going to come here, copy this curl snippet, open Visual Studio Code, and just create a function, const ask OpenAI. And this is probably an async function here. And what we'll do is, we have a curl. I want to turn this into a fetch. And there's a powerful extension called GitHub Copilot Labs. And this is new. It's like Copilot, but on steroids. And it allows like code conversions and things. It doesn't really work very reliably, but I figured we could try it. Okay. So to try that, let's go here. Copilot Labs. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to highlight this text and say, using the custom brush, I'm going to say, convert this curl command to a JavaScript fetch request. And it's going to spin a bit. Okay, wow. Not bad. We need an authorization, which contains a bearer token. And we, of course, also need a body. What's the matter here? Right, we need another curly. We need a request body. That's very important. So we'll do comma, body. And what does this thing expect? Well, it's JSON string, first of all. And it needs a model and messages. So we'll do that. We'll just give it this object here. I'm going to use Turbo 0301 just because it's under less load oftentimes. And we'll start with a system prompt. So system, and we'll tell it like who it is. We'll give it an identity statement, okay? You are Jarvis, Jarvis, Tony Stark's personal AI assistant. Tony Stark, of course, is also Iron Man. Keep your responses as terse and concise as possible. Okay, so that's an instruction. Now, what we need to do is everything that's said, we need to keep in a log because ChatGPT is conversational. So every time we recognize speech, we need to append that to a list. Okay, so let's do that. So we'll say const things said is an empty array. And not only are we going to console log this, but instead we'll things said dot push text, which is a string, but this is a string. Okay, perfect. Now we'll just map. So we'll say things said dot map. Role is user content. This is perfect. And so now we're asking OpenAI. So we're pushing it there, and then we'll await, or rather, const response is await ask OpenAI. This is not an async function. And now that looks good. So we'll just console log the response and see what we get. Okay, let's take a look. So so far so good. Wait. Hello, I need a suit immediately. Okay, well, nothing. It's 401, and that's because I don't have a bearer token. I'm about to show you my API key. Please don't copy it. Be a nice person, okay? It can be expensive if you abuse it. Anyway, so .env. You saw nothing. You saw nothing. You saw nothing. Hello, I need a brand new suit of armor immediately. How do I do it? 400. Probably because I'm talking to the wrong model. Let's take a look here. What's the problem? Error. Invalid request error. Role user content. Okay, is not of type object. Right. I need to spread that. Thank you. Hello, I need a suit of armor immediately. Okay, we got back undefined, but the request path, so it's choices, 0, message, content. And that's what we want to console log. Response. First of all, let's return this, serialize this to JSON. And now we need response dot choices 0 dot message dot content. All right. This will be our answer. And then we'll just console.log this answer just to be sure. All right, answer. Okay, let's try this again. I need a suit of armor around the world. What should I call it? Avengers Initiative. Ooh, it's happening. So we have speech to text. We are talking to OpenAI. Now we need text to speech. Okay. Um, how can we do this? We can do this using the speech synthesis API. This is also just a native web API. Keep in mind, we're writing TypeScript, but there's no build tool or anything. This is just straight in the browser. So let's use speech synthesis. So we get the answer. We need to speak the answer. So how do we do this? We'll have a function called speak, speak a string of text. And what we want to do is const utterance, exactly. I should have let Copilot write this. Utterance. So a speech synthesis utterance is an utterance of a string. And what we want to do is, okay, that's pretty basic, but we also want to do some voices. So we'll say const voice is a speech synthesis dot get voices, and we'll just get the first voice. This is usually the British one, the one that I want. And we'll say utterance dot voice is this voice. And then we speak. And then let's actually just leave it there. And what we'll do is we'll say, speak answer. How much money do I need to build Avengers Tower? That's cool, but it didn't speak it. It didn't speak it because it needs an event. So what we're going to do is, this is a security consideration. You can't just have a thing just speak to you without a user interaction. You need a click event or something like this. So to start listening, we'll add a click event to the button that exists, just so that the browser isn't protective of the computer just randomly speaking at you, which can be a bit of a scary experience. Okay, so what we'll do is, instead of recognition.start, we'll go back to our button in the HTML. What's the ID? Let's give it an ID. ID is start. And this will now make it a global variable. Isn't that ridiculous? So what we'll do is, instead of just recognition.start, we'll do start.add event listener, click, and then we'll recognition.start. We'll do this. Save. So now it's not listening by default, but I'll click this and then speak, and then it should work. Hey Jarvis, how much money is it going to take to build a new car?
I'm sorry, Mr. Stark has not provided me with sufficient details to estimate the cost of building a new car. Please provide more information.
Why did it speak to Mr. Stark and say Mr. Stark? Unless it knows that I'm not Mr. Stark. Maybe we can, through the system prompt, tell it I'm Mr. Stark. Okay, let's do that. System prompt, you are Jarvis. Tony Stark, of course, is also Iron Man. Your user is Iron Man or Tony. Let's try this again. Jarvis, what is my favorite color on my soup?
I'm sorry, Tony. I cannot determine your favorite soup color as it is not a standard preference.
Thinks I'm Tony. Okay, so it's good. We have speech to text. We're talking to OpenAI, and now we need text to speech. Let's rather we have text to speech, but it's not a conversation. Like, it just stops, and then it's done. And then I have to click the button to start speaking again. I want it to just be on forever and just have a long conversation. Okay, let's close the loop and then summarize everything we did. So how are we going to do this? When we finish speaking, so here, what we want to do is utterance dot on end. We want to, let's return a new promise. Promise resolve. And notice how we're not handling errors. That's because I like chaos sometimes. When we finish, when it finishes speaking, we'll resolve the promise. Now we can await speak, and when speak is over, we can start recognition again. And now we can have an actual conversation. So let's start. Hey Jarvis, what's the greatest JavaScript conference on earth?
Sorry, Tony. As an AI assistant, I am programmed to provide factual responses. There is no objectively greatest conference, as it can vary depending on individual preferences. However, some popular conferences for JavaScript include JSConf, ReactConf, and Node Summit.
Okay, around June 1st in Amsterdam, what is the greatest conference around?
The greatest JavaScript conference in Amsterdam around the 1st of June is JavaScript Conference.
Jarvis, that's not a real conference.
I apologize, Tony. There is no conference around the 1st of June in Amsterdam that matches your criteria for being the greatest.
Okay, can I still fly to Amsterdam in my suit? How long is it going to take me to get to Amsterdam from the United States?
Yes, you can fly to Amsterdam in your suit. It would take approximately 7 to 8 hours to fly from New York to Amsterdam, traveling at supersonic speeds.
Thanks a lot, Jarvis. I'm going to close the tab now, okay? Because I didn't create a stop mechanism.
Understood, user. Stay safe.
Yeah, so that's we just did that. We just created a voice commanded Jarvis-like AI using only browser-based native JavaScript APIs. The speech recognition API, uses whatever browser's recognizer is available. That's why we use Chrome. It varies from browser to browser. It is not standard yet. It probably will be, although it has been 10 years in the browser and still not standard. So your mileage may vary. The speech synthesis API uses voices from a user's operating system only. You can't give it like custom voices, although there are other solutions to do that. I would invite you to experiment and play. Let's browse the code one last time, the final code, identify maybe mistakes we made or things we could do better, and then wrap up. Okay, let's go. So I have Google here. Let's open up the thing again. It's fine. So what did we do? We have new WebKit speech recognition. When we click the button rather, we start the recognition. And this user event is important because you don't want your browser doesn't want to just randomly start listening to things and, spy on people. We keep an array of things said and feed this to OpenAI. Notice we're making a bit of a mistake because when we get an answer, we should actually append this. So things said dot push answer. This will give the AI more context. This looks good. And then we can maybe remove some console.logs. And we have this loop where we start listening. And then once you say something, and the machine answers, then you start listening again. To speak, we are using the speech synthesis utterance that just utters some text, and we set the voice to a system voice. This is the default one. We can maybe even change this and see what happens. And this looks good. And then when it ends, we resolve the promise so that we can come back and start. Lastly, we have a fetch to OpenAI's completions API. This is just a copy paste, and we send all the things said. So this isn't really that hard. It's less than 50 lines of code, and we have a voice activated Jarvis style assistant using only native web APIs. Let's have one last conversation with it in an optimized way with a different voice, and then wrap up. Okay, let's do it. So, hey Jarvis, what is the coolest thing about Amsterdam, June 1st?
Sorry, I am not programmed to provide subjective opinions. Would you like me to look up some interesting events happening in Amsterdam on the 1st of June?
Sure, that sounds good. Sometimes it takes a while.
Based on my search, here are some events happening in Amsterdam on June 1st. One such huge is X-Late Dance Festival, music festival every day, featuring various DJs. All in festival, and a cultural festival featuring a variety of performances and events.
Okay. That's an interesting one. We're going to leave it there. Thank you for watching this, and I hope there was meaningful things in here for you. I would love to see some ways we can take this forward. I would like to actually give you some ideas in closing about how we can take this forward. One, you could literally create a product out of this if you want, with the caveats of browser compatibility and so on. You could turn it into an open source project, invite contributions, and actually have something. Two, I would like to recommend the use of an app or a system or a tool like Towery. For those of you who haven't heard of Towery, it's a way to create native desktop-like experiences using web languages, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the backend is then Rust. So you can pass messages between your front end with browser-based technologies and Rust to create performant things. Indeed, everybody's rewriting things in Rust and they think they're cool because of it, and indeed Rust is very cool. So you could really make a native desktop app using Towery and this and just give people their own Jarvis. I think that's actually pretty cool, especially if it's connected to their own OpenAI account that really knows them, There's many ways you can take this forward, but I'm going to leave it here. Just one last thing for Towery, that is Towery.apps, I believe. Now let's just go here. I think, yeah, Towery.app, if you wanted to look into that. But I'm going to leave it here. Thank you so much for entertaining this fun little session, and I hope it was meaningful and valuable for the rest of you. If you'd like to support me, our DevRel work, etc., feel free to follow me. I'm on Twitter at Tejas Kumar _. This is me. And also on Blue Sky at tage.as. And with that, I want to thank you so much for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.